This is CBC Nova Scotia News.
Turmoil in Ottawa. Finance Minister Chrystia Freeland abruptly resigns from cabinet after a disagreement with the Prime Minister. We have the latest. Get on the bus. The new Scotia Square transit terminal on Barrington Street opens to commuters. And looking back, the Maritime Museum of the Atlantic explores holiday traditions at sea.
After a lovely quiet stretch, things turn active again with 3 systems to watch over the next 7 days. Some rain, some snow. Your full forecast is coming up.
Good evening. We begin with a major political earthquake today in Ottawa. In a stunning move, Deputy Prime Minister and Finance Minister Chrystia Freeland has resigned from Prime Minister Justin Trudeau's cabinet. Her resignation comes on the same day she was to announce the government's latest economic statement. In a letter to the Prime Minister that Freeland released on social media, she says she's stepping down over differences with Trudeau. Freeland says Trudeau told her on Friday that he wanted to replace her as finance minister. She was offered another cabinet post, but turned it down. Freeland appears to have taken a jab at the current tax holiday from the GST, referring to what she calls costly political gimmicks. Freeland's resignation has many politicians calling on Trudeau to resign. Meanwhile, the person who has represented Nova Scotia at the federal cabinet table is also stepping down. Federal Housing Minister Sean Fraser announced today he will not run in the next election. He'll continue to represent the riding of Central Nova, but he says leaving cabinet will allow him to spend more time with his family.
But for now, Canada will have another housing minister. Next year, Central Nova will have another member of parliament. But my kids will never have another dad. Sarah, Molly, and Jack, you mean the world to me. I love you all, and I can't wait to get home for Christmas.
Fraser was asked last week if he was interested in becoming leader of the provincial Liberal Party, but would not commit to the idea. Fraser has been the MP for Central Nova for nearly a decade. Canada Post workers in Nova Scotia and across the country have been ordered back to work tomorrow, ending a month-long strike. Workers on the picket line in Halifax say they are upset by the decision.
We have a constitutional right to bargain, to strike, and the government's interfered with this. So it's unacceptable. They're upset, rightfully so. I don't blame them. We tried to negotiate. The members are upset. They're not willing to accept this.
On Sunday, the Canada Industrial Relations Board ordered an end to the work stoppage. The board has ruled the two sides are at an impasse and they're unlikely to reach a deal by the end of the year. Business groups and consumers have been calling for government intervention. The strike has limited holiday shopping and deliveries. The Provincial Health Authority will spend more than $4 million to renovate and replace outdated and out-of-order elevators at the Victoria General Hospital in Halifax. As Michael Gorman reports, it is the latest example of efforts to extend the life of a facility that successive provincial governments have tried to replace.
The ailing Victoria General Hospital has such poor water quality that patients and staff cannot drink it. Air quality concerns mean not all parts of the facility can have air conditioning during the summer. Now, some of the elevators have stopped working. 2 of the 4 elevators in the Victoria building have been offline since last spring. In the Bethune building, 1 elevator stopped working around the same time, and the other went on the fritz a few weeks ago. The Health Authority has launched tandem construction projects to replace the broken and outdated elevators and upgraded the building systems to accommodate them. The work is expected to take up to 20 months and cost about $4.1 million. It's the latest example of efforts to extend the life of a complex that was supposed to begin seeing a wrecking ball several years ago. But until the provincial government can complete the redevelopment of the Halifax Infirmary, life goes on for the Victoria General Hospital. Michael Gorman, CBC News, Halifax.
An Ontario company and a former foreman have been fined a combined $100,000 after accepting responsibility for Occupational Health and Safety Act violations in connection with a fatal fall at a Dartmouth construction site back in March of 2018. 22-year-old Brandon Alcorn died from head injuries after he fell from the roof of the Kent Building Supply store in Dartmouth Crossing. Insulated Panel and Structures Incorporated pleaded guilty to 4 offenses, admitting it failed to ensure fall protection gear was used on the day of the accident. 42-year-old Jeff Scott Gooch of Halifax also pleaded guilty to 2 counts of failing to ensure fall protection equipment was used. Gooch, Alcorn, and another worker were installing weatherproofing membrane on the walls of the tower entrance when Alcorn walked backward off the edge of the roof and fell 18 feet. Ryan Snoddon with us now to talk weather. Lots of sun on the weekend. Wasn't that just beautiful?
Yeah, and picking up that trend today, but that is about it. We do have wet weather on the way for tomorrow. Cape Breton will actually see a little bit of sun tomorrow morning, perhaps Antigonish and Eastern Shore, the Guysborough County area, but that sun will be fleeting as that cloud quickly builds in. We're looking at gusty winds tomorrow and wet weather. Yes, some rain. Looks like 5 to 10 millimeters, so not a huge shot of rain. Those winds gusting 60 to 70 kilometers per hour, and notably very mild, 8 to 10 degrees, those temperature highs for tomorrow as that system does track through. That is the first of 3 systems we're watching over the next 7. So there it is. It's a quick mover. It moves out, and then we've got a pretty fine day shaping up for Wednesday. Temperatures mild, and we'll see some sunshine in the mix. And then that next system tracks in on Thursday. This one mostly rain, some snow, and mixing in higher terrain areas of the north. And then a third and final system for the week. These 2 lows set to merge over the eastern seaboard, becoming a larger system for Saturday, Tom. We'll talk about that with your 7-day.
Lots to keep an eye on. Okay, Ryan, thanks so much.
Thank you.
Another milestone today in the Cogswell redevelopment project. Halifax Transit's new terminal reopened at Scotia Square. And most of those downtown detours that riders endured for months have come to an end. But will it reduce congestion? Preston Mulligan has more.
After months of detours and confusion about where to actually catch the bus downtown, things are finally getting back to normal.
What you see now and right off the bat are the wider sidewalks and dedicated laybys for transit with the nice red concrete, so it's very clear where transit's supposed to be.
The newly refurbished terminal at Scotia Square opened today on schedule and on budget, and so far users like what they see.
I think it's great. It's much better, more modern. You don't trip over the curbs as much. Yeah. I notice everything's a lot smoother. Yeah, it's really nice, really nice.
Buses are on time like they should be, and the routes hasn't changed much, so we're very happy with what we see.
Halifax Transit sent a team of yellow-vested guides downtown to help riders around Scotia Square get reacquainted with the stops. And even though it opened on schedule, there's still some work to do. Eventually, these shelters that line the bus stop along Barrington Street will be surrounded with glass, and they'll be heated. Buses can now enter the Cogswell roundabout that opened in October, which planners say should help a little bit with congestion.
But the really big win is that transit, which has been stuck, which is also not helping the congestion. We'll be able to kind of fly out of here with our new bus lanes.
But for transit advocates, the old problems persist. Evan Trenholm says this year was the worst on record for late buses.
I know the hope with Halifax Transit in particular was that having a new space, a central space, might draw passengers back to the network. And even though it's still not going to help with things like on-time performance, particularly with some of the routes we've seen recently, maybe having a little bit of a nicer space to even be around might help draw some riders back in.
His organization says improvements like this to transit are our best hope for smoother commutes. Preston Mulligan, CBC News, Halifax.
A political scientist at Cape Breton University has written a new children's book. The book is addressed to his 2-year-old son. It chronicles the many ways his late wife showed her love and how much that love is needed in the world. The CBC's Kyle Moore reports.
Dearest Oliver, I want to tell you about your mamusha, your mom.
Tom Urbaniak reads the first page of a book he wrote about his wife, Alison Etter. She passed away on Valentine's Day at the age of 41, just 3 days after their son Oliver's 2nd birthday.
It's been a hard year. My dad passed away 15 hours after Alison, and then my mom 2 months later. And sometimes I feel a little bit guilty because it's hard to hold everyone in the light at the same time.
Tom has processed that experience and has written a children's book about the kind of person Allison was. He calls it a true story for a world that needs more love.
One of the messages in the book is that love doesn't die. And it very much felt and feels like Allison's spirit is still moving in the world. And I'm not sure I would have felt that as directly if I hadn't worked on this project.
Allison was a minister. At the time of her passing, she was the chair of the United Church of Canada's National Committee of Theology. She was a person who deeply cared for others. It's a trait Urbaniak says he wanted to share with readers of a young age.
I was really amazed that he had the strength to do this and move forward with it.
Tammy Krashnishi did the illustrations for the book. She says it was an emotional process for her.
It was very hard. It was very challenging. I'll be honest. There was many a times that I cried. I had tears in my eyes.
I want to tell you about your Mamusha's love. She loved you. She still loves you, even though we can't see her.
Urbaniak says the book has reinforced his relationship with his son.
The fact that in a way we worked on this together, I think that's really special. And that I could do something to sort of keep that connection between him and his mom, who loved him fiercely.
All royalties from the book are going to the Allison Etter Memorial Fund. Kyle Moore, CBC News, Sydney.
Birders are tracking all the different species living in Halifax public gardens as part of the long-running Christmas bird count. The winter count has been happening across North America since the year 1900. Birds Canada says the count is the oldest citizen science project in the country. The organizer behind this count says they chose to do it in public gardens because of the increasing popularity of bird tours in the park.
There are a number of zones across Canada, around 500. Each of those has a compiler that coordinates the count. Different discrete little parts of those multiple zones. People do counts throughout the day, and this year we're taking part in that as having the public gardens as our discrete little part, where we have around a dozen volunteers that have come out today to help out with the count. I've been here since 7:30 a.m. helping to identify the birds, and we've seen a wide diversity of what the public gardens has to offer throughout the year.
The bird count helps experts track birds' migration patterns and how those patterns are being affected by climate change. An upcoming talk at the Maritime Museum of the Atlantic explores holiday traditions at sea. It covers from the mid-1800s to the present day. The talk is tomorrow night with free admission, but the museum is accepting donations for Feed Nova Scotia. The CBC's Anjali Patil got a sneak peek.
Hi, so my name is Jason Climby. I'm part of the visitor experience team here at the Maritime Museum of the Atlantic.
You're giving a talk, Christmas at Sea. Tell me a little bit about what you're going to talk about at that.
So it's going to be kind of an overview of some of the various Christmas traditions that mariners have done both here in Nova Scotia and for vessels that come in and out of the harbor. So we do have one card from Queen Elizabeth herself.
Okay.
Yeah, no, sorry, the ship. Not the. Yeah, I always have to make that clear.
Wow.
It always gets a bit tricky when you have a ship named Queen Elizabeth, and that usually happens more than once.
How would they be getting these cards out there, and how would they be getting mail?
So normally cards like this would either get mailed either before the ship sailed out or when it arrived.
Did sailors have Christmas trees on board? Are you able to give a little sneak preview of?
They did. It largely depends, particularly in the 19th century, how generous your captain would be. A lot of commercial vessels, most captains really were, wanted to ensure that the ship was and its crew were really focused on the day-to-day work on board.
Why should people come to your talk on Tuesday?
You'll get to learn about what life is like for contemporary seafarers that come to Halifax, which I think, to be honest, are some of the most, I wouldn't say ignored, but I would say they're almost invisible here in Halifax. I think for most of us who live here, the harbor itself is something we all kind of take for granted. We see the ships come and go, but we really don't think that much about what life is like on these vessels.
Familiar view of Mahone Bay for you there. Ryan Snoddon up next with your full weather forecast right after this. All right, lots of sun on the weekend. So great for shopping and visiting and getting the Christmas trees and that kind of stuff, but kind of coming to a temporary end at least, huh?
Yeah, it was a good time for sure. Lots of running around and maybe a few odds and ends. I finally got that patio furniture put away.
Good for you. Finally. Yeah. That's been on the list for a while.
It has been on the list for a long time. But yeah, definitely a great weekend. A nice Monday as well. But the sun certainly going by the wayside for tomorrow with some wet weather. And as I said off the top, 3 systems to keep an eye on this week. Saturday's the most interesting system. It's also the most uncertain, but it's the best possibility we have of kind of a widespread snow event. So we're going to keep an eye on that one pretty closely this week, obviously. Have a look at current temperatures, and you can see where we are right now. -1 in Halifax, -2 at the airport. Temperatures 2 on the plus side. Lunenburg, Kentville, Parsborough's at 3 on the plus side right now. And as we look into the future, as we are certainly, let's first circle to the winds. That's what I've got loaded up here next. And you can see the winds generally light. And as we move back and have a look at the weather systems map, this is the system that is indeed going to be bringing in the wet weather and also a bump in temperatures beginning tonight. In fact, western areas of the province will see temperatures creeping up before morning. And you can see that line of rain that stretches from Toronto down through Pittsburgh and all the way down to Memphis right now. It's a pretty narrow line, and so it will pass through pretty quickly through the day tomorrow, but certainly impacting us, and some wet weather on the way. Have a look at temperatures across the country right now. 6 in Vancouver. Temps still pretty chilly in the prairies and into Winnipeg. And then as we move into the Great Lakes, this bump in temperatures that's on the way for us. You can see off to the U.S. South looking a little more normal for this time of year. Now, looking at the temperatures for tonight, these are your overnight lows, -2 to -5, generally speaking, but temperatures are going to be bumping up towards morning for western areas, as I just said. Have a look at how things are going to progress, and as we move into the overnight hours, this is where we'll see those temperatures dropping, and then rising again through to tomorrow morning. Should be starting around the freezing mark in Halifax and Kentville, and all areas to the west of that will likely be on the plus side by the time we hit the pavement tomorrow morning. Still below freezing for eastern parts of the mainland and into Cape Breton. And again, those temperatures will then rise for you folks, of course, in that southerly wind. And look how quickly we rise in the west. By noon, already into the high single, low double digits with this line of rain tracking in. Halifax, Truro, up towards Pictou County, into the mix by lunchtime with this line that will then push eastward through Antigonish into Guysborough and then eventually into Cape Breton throughout the afternoon. And this line, again, a pretty narrow band. And so by 6 o'clock, already seeing the rain clear away for western areas and a slow tick down for tomorrow evening. But a pretty fine evening shaping up for most of the province for the dog walk tomorrow night. As you can see, 8-9 degrees for temperatures in the afternoon tomorrow. Wouldn't be surprised if we do see more double-digit peaks here for supper time into the early evening hours, with those winds from the south gusting to 60 kilometers per hour for Cape Breton tomorrow. And you can see into the central parts of the mainland, we're looking at temperatures anywhere from 9 to 10 degrees for most. Similar story in the west, with those winds gusting to 70. Now let's time those winds out, and you can see by tomorrow morning, already starting to ramp up in here in through the west, and we'll see those winds, I think, peaking around 70 kilometers per hour. The best chance of that is going to be through the Tri-County area, in through the Halifax area. Gusts certainly possible to 70, but it's more likely a widespread 60 kilometer per hour gust here in through central, and then in the east, Guysborough County and in through Cape Breton. Better chance here we'll see gusts to 70 in through the evening, with some stronger gusts possible for the Shuttacamp region and Inverness County in those downsloping winds. 5-6 degrees for Wednesday, pretty quiet overall. That next system we're keeping an eye on, this is Thursday. Higher terrain areas, Cobequid Pass, and into the higher terrain areas of the 104 and the Cape Breton Highlands. This is going to be our best chance of some wet accumulating snow on Thursday. And this is the system I was talking about for the Saturday time period. 2 systems becoming one as it merges and moves its way up the eastern seaboard. That could throw some snow into the mix on Saturday, Tom. Lots of uncertainty with that, but if you have travel plans, we'll be all over it this week.
You bet. Okay, thanks so much for that, Ryan.
Thank you.
Coming up, from the postal strike to Ottawa's GST holiday, it's been a challenging retail season for many. A 2-month GST/HST holiday began on the weekend on things like restaurant meals, children's clothing, beer, and wine, with mixed feelings from both shoppers and retailers. Jim Cormier is with the Retail Council of Canada. So, Mr. Cormier, the GST holiday is on, politically charged as it may be, given everything that's happening in Ottawa. But from the retailer's point of view, is this smart policy? Does it help? Is it helping?
It hasn't helped a ton. We want to be productive in this discussion, and obviously we understand that if you can provide a tax holiday to consumers, that's good news for potential consumers of retail products. That said, the way that they handled it, meaning the federal government in this case, we weren't big fans of that. Giving us a 3-week runway for retailers of all sizes to deal with the very complicated situation of trying to figure out which of my items that I sell will be subject to the tax holiday, which ones will not. Invariably, there's a number of complications, and also, just the manual, in some cases, the manual changing of your point of sale systems to ensure that you're complying with the law as of right now. And then 2 months later, you have to change it all back. So it's not really been good for the retail sector during their busiest time of year, where they've had to deal with all of the pitfalls involved in making these changes to ensure that the tax man's not going to come after them.
Yeah, any indications, at least anecdotally, over the weekend about how many were ready for this?
I think to varying degrees. Obviously they weren't going to be shouting from the hilltops if they weren't quite ready. We do understand, after we've raised this issue enough, that the feds have been saying, look, as long as they're making best efforts, the government's not going to come after them. But that said, it's a big department, the Department of Finance, and you never can tell if you get some overzealous member of the department coming after some poor retailer that's just trying to make some money this time of year. This is a crucial time of year for our members, where in some cases, smaller ones, they make upwards of 50% of their sales in the month of December. So to throw this at them in the middle of it, it's really been difficult.
And I imagine it has been challenging, given all that's been happening with Canada Post as well. Now beginning to move the mail again. Does it help salvage the Christmas retail season for some at this point?
Not really. I don't want to sound like a bah humbug in this, but we needed this situation to be fixed a few weeks ago. It went on for far too long. We understand that the best agreements are those that are negotiated at the bargaining table, but in this case, Canada Post is still a crucial element of allowing businesses to deliver their products. And this situation went on far too long. The Christmas season, you're really going to be hard pressed to be able to find any type of service that will be able to get your product to its location before, obviously, December 25th. There will always be situations where there might be a company that can help you out, but most of those companies were completely backlogged due to the fact that Canada Post was on strike. So, we have to remember, too, that for small and mid-sized retailers, Canada Post was really the only option because it was affordable.
Yeah, backlog now, and I guess those same couriers would be having issues as well. Presumably some people were relying on those couriers and trying to make do, but I guess that wasn't a recipe for success for everyone.
Well, if you were always dealing with Canada Post and you had to pivot very quickly to look for another option, in some cases those other options were completely booked up, or some of them were taking advantage of it by charging premium prices above and beyond what they normally would charge. At least we're hearing that anecdotally. So, you were left with really no options. So you do have a lot of scenarios now, a lot of situations, where you're hearing of product being tied up in the queue, and obviously people at the other end hoping to be receiving gifts from their loved ones, or even just business to business supplies being sent through that are now going to be delayed until potentially well after Christmas by the time people at Canada Post and the other companies work out the backlog.
I know it'll be a while before the numbers get crunched, but just quickly before we go, generally speaking, what is your sense of what the retail season has been like? Given all these obstacles, how are retailers doing?
They're making the best of a bad situation. We knew going into the season that it was going to be a slower season, particularly here in Atlantic Canada. For the first time in the 13 years that I've been doing this job, Atlantic Canadians were not going to be the top spenders in the holiday season. We were bumped down to third. So we knew already going in that it was going to be a slower season. You add to it now the labor unrest and the inability to send packages out when so many retailers have moved to e-commerce as a way to try and survive against the big international e-commerce entities. Now they're stuck with this scenario where their product wasn't able to move. So it could end up being a slower holiday season. We hope not. And, obviously that's always followed by a slower January, February for most retail. So it's not shaping up to be a good scenario leading into 2025.
All right, we'll be watching for those numbers at any rate. Jim Cormier with the Retail Council of Canada. Thank you.
Thank you.
Coming up, Ottawa unveils its fall economic statement despite the finance minister's surprise resignation. And hundreds of people are feared dead after a powerful cyclone hits the French territory of Mayotte in the Indian Ocean. Welcome back. As we told you earlier, Deputy Prime Minister and Finance Minister Chrystia Freeland has resigned from Prime Minister Justin Trudeau's cabinet. The news comes on the day she was to deliver the government's fall economic statement. As the CBC's Rafi Boudjikanian reports, it has fired up the opposition and rattled the Liberal government.
From a minister's departure Justin Trudeau knew about,
I've advised the Prime Minister earlier this fall that I will not be seeking re-election as a Member of Parliament for Central Nova during the next campaign.
to another that landed as a bombshell. Chrystia Freeland, instead of delivering a fall economic statement, publishing this letter, where she wrote, "On Friday, you told me you no longer want me to serve as your finance minister and offered me another position in cabinet. The only viable path is for me to resign." Also saying she and Trudeau have been at odds about the best path forward for Canada, calling out costly political gimmicks the country can ill afford as it faces U.S. President-elect Donald Trump's tariff threat.
What the I mean, how does the Prime Minister, on the eve of a statement that we've been waiting for months, deep six his finance minister and think that things are going to be normal?
The reviews from some of Trudeau's own caucus no less scathing.
Let's put it this way. Firing a Minister of Finance who has served you extremely well is not what I would call a trustworthy move. And that's all.
Should he resign?
Yes.
I've been a great defender, but I just don't see how we move forward. I think he needs to go, yeah.
Calls echoed by the opposition.
Now is the time for a carbon tax election to turn the decision away from me or Mr. Trudeau.
I'm calling on Justin Trudeau to resign. He has to go.
While Trudeau hurriedly had veteran cabinet member Dominic LeBlanc sworn into finance,
do solemnly and sincerely promise and swear.
As other ministers had this to say about Monday's events.
The moment now is for us to focus on the best interest of Canadians. That's what we're doing.
Chrystia Freeland is a good friend, someone I work with very, very closely. As president of the Treasury Board and Minister of Transport, this news has hit me really hard.
At least 6 Liberal MPs have publicly called on Trudeau to resign today as he meets with his caucus to discuss next steps. Rafi Boudjikanian on CBC News, Ottawa.
Chrystia Freeland's surprise resignation came just hours before she was supposed to deliver the fall economic statement. It was tabled instead by government leader Karina Gould. The CBC's Ashley Burke has the details on what's in the economic statement.
A media lockup unlike any other. Journalists showed up to view embargoed copies of the government's fall economic statement just as the finance minister set to deliver it stepped down.
From Finance Minister, Deputy Prime Minister Chrystia Freeland, that she in fact is no longer going to be a finance minister and indeed is resigning from the cabinet.
Amid the bombshell news, the very document stayed shrouded under black sheets for almost 4 hours. It was unclear if it would be released at all until early afternoon. We finally got our hands on this document with about 2 hours rather than 6 to parse through nearly 300 pages of macroeconomic forecasts. And this document is one of the reasons for the split between Freeland and the Prime Minister. Freeland wrote, in the face of Donald Trump's tariff threats, it was important to keep Canada's fiscal powder dry and avoid costly political gimmicks. The budget includes $1.6 billion for a tax break on holiday essentials. In total, there's more than $24 billion in new spending over the next 6 years. And the government didn't stick to its own self-imposed target to keep the deficit down around $40 billion. It's close to $62 billion for the last fiscal year. This financial expert says it's due to one-time costs from COVID liabilities and Indigenous lawsuits.
We're still seeing a relatively high-spending government that is not necessarily keeping enough powder dry for what could happen between now and the next budget.
That uncertainty trumps administration. The government has a $1.3 billion plan to beef up security at Canada's border to respond. The economic projections include what might happen if Trump introduces some tariffs, but doesn't explore what a full-out trade war would look like. Ashley Burke, CBC News, Ottawa.
France is using ships and military aircraft to rush rescue workers and supplies to Mayotte. The tiny French territory in the Indian Ocean suffered catastrophic damage Saturday after Cyclone Cheeto ripped through across the islands, rather. The CBC's Crystal Gamansing has the latest.
In Mayotte, hundreds or even thousands are feared dead. Cyclone Cheeto is described as the strongest to hit the French islands in 90 years. It brought winds of more than 220 kilometers per hour, churning up waves reaching 8 meters high. The main hospital sustained heavy damage, as did many government buildings. Even the airport control tower was hit. Additional French military members have been deployed. Teams have been working to clear away debris and search for survivors. Communications are limited, with power and phone lines being down. The French Interior Minister now on the ground, offering support, but also urging calm.
Parce qu'il reste une montagne à déplacer. Donc chacun doit se mobiliser, chacun doit être à son poste, professionnel. Pas de panique. Pas de précipitation, le sang-froid, ce que vous avez appris, vous êtes des professionnels.
Mayotte is an impoverished nation located off of the east coast of Africa. There's an estimated 300,000 who live there. 100,000 are said to live in slums. Many of those communities were destroyed by the cyclone. Officials have expressed concern about access to food, clean drinking water, and sanitation, along with the possible spread of disease such as cholera. The French Red Cross is working to bring in supplies and distribute them, along with the French military. Crystal Gamansing, CBC News, London.
It is a trial in France that has triggered an overpouring of support for the victim. 71-year-old Gisèle Pelicot was cheered again today when she attended the hearings as her husband and dozens of others took the stand one last time. Sarah Levitt has the details from outside the court and a warning that some of the details are disturbing.
It's become a ritual. The dawn huddle outside of Avignon's courthouse for a much talked about trial. Inside, another ritual. Acclamation for Gisèle Pelicot, who has become an icon for opening her mass rape case to the public. She waived her right to anonymity, putting a face and name to a rape victim, a rare occurrence. The alleged assaults happened here in her nearby hometown of Mazan. Her husband is accused of drugging her, inviting dozens of men to this parking lot before sneaking them to his home to rape her. That went on for 10 years. He's pleaded guilty. 50 other men are also accused. A plumber, volunteer firefighter, and a retiree among them. On Monday, those men had the chance to address the court. On the streets of Avignon, it's hard to ignore what's been going on.
We want justice.
Gisèle's name, even image, is on display throughout the city.
Gisèle made us a huge gift. That's why we want to thank her. That's why we made that.
And with that, Gisèle Pelicot walks out of the courtroom for the last time before the verdicts come down. In the court, we heard from Dominique Pelicot with his last words. He started by highlighting the courage of his ex-wife and begging forgiveness from his family. The prosecution has asked for the maximum sentence, 20 years for Dominique Pelicot, and between 4 to 18 years for the other men. The verdicts and sentencing come Friday at the latest. Within the clamor of the media, I ask Gisèle,
Est-ce que vous êtes soulagée?
Are you relieved?
Pas aujourd'hui, pas aujourd'hui.
Not today, she says. Not today. Sarah Levitt, CBC News, Avignon, France.
Changes to the criminal code that are supposed to make it easier to lay charges in cases of workplace deaths don't seem to be working. That's according to the United Steelworkers Union and a woman in Newfoundland who lost her husband in a refinery explosion 2 years ago. The CBC's Rob Antle reports.
He went to work that morning and he never come home, and it wasn't his fault.
Everything changed for Nora Gill-Peddle on the Friday before the Labor Day weekend 2 years ago. Her husband, Sean Peddle, was medevaced to hospital after an explosion at the Come By Chance refinery in eastern Newfoundland.
We spent 43 days in ICU. Just hoping to see him at 10-minute snippets every single day, but until he passed.
Brea Renewable Fuels and a contractor are facing provincial workplace safety charges. No pleas have been entered yet, but Brea has stressed that it's committed to safety. The RCMP also launched a criminal investigation. No criminal charges have been filed. After the 1992 West Ray mine explosion that killed 26 miners in Nova Scotia, the law was changed to make it easier to do just that in cases of death in the workplace.
The reality is, 20 years later, it's still not being utilized.
Nationally, the United Steelworkers pushed to get the law through. Now, the union tracks how many times it's actually been used. Over 2 decades up to the spring of this year, they found just 26 incidents where the West Ray amendments were used to bring criminal negligence charges in cases of serious worker injury and death, and only 11 successful prosecutions. A senior Mountie says police take workplace fatalities very seriously, and there's a high bar that must be met under the criminal process.
Criminal negligence, as it's defined in the criminal code, it's when there's a display of wanton, reckless disregard for lives. This is actually a very high evidentiary threshold.
The Federal Justice Department says it has taken a number of steps, like helping develop training resources for cops and Crown prosecutors. But it offered no specifics when asked about calls for a review of the law to see whether it's working as intended, and how they gauge the success of legislation like West Ray, saying only that the implementation of criminal law is reviewed on an ongoing basis. Back in Newfoundland, Nora Gill-Peddle wishes there was political will to do more with the West Ray law.
It's just a waste, and people are dying because of it. Do it for Sean, if no one else.
Rob Antle, CBC News, Clarenville, Newfoundland.
An Ottawa man who was charged twice for checked bags on a recent flight is speaking out. He paid Air Canada and then had to pay United. That's a violation of federal rules. Erica Johnson has this Go Public investigation into excess baggage fees and why customers keep getting overcharged.
Rob Eadson knew he'd need to bring a lot of stuff on a family trip to San Diego, traveling with his wife and young son.
It looks like we have bags included.
So he paid a higher fare to make sure all 3 Air Canada tickets included 1 bag per person. Their flights were what's called a code share, meaning one airline, in this case Air Canada, sells seats on a flight operated by another carrier, in this case United. But when they checked in, the United agent said Eadson had to ante up for all 3 bags again, even though he had proof he'd already paid.
He just told me that's an Air Canada receipt. It doesn't apply to United, and we would have to pay for bags.
Eadson filed a claim for compensation, but Air Canada refused to reimburse him.
For them to just say, absolutely, stonewall you and say no is really disappointing.
It's also violating federal rules on baggage that say when passengers have a ticket to and from Canada that involves more than one airline, carriers must apply a single set of baggage rules.
It's a question of Air Canada dropping the ball in making sure United knows the conditions of the fare that the passenger was ticketed on for this United Airlines flight.
Air Canada could also be violating the Competition Act, says this UBC prof, selling tickets at one price, then customers get dinged with more fees.
If that information doesn't match their expectation, this constitutes potentially hidden pricing, false advertising, deceptive marketing. Those are all within the same vein.
Eadson says his family enjoyed their trip to San Diego, and after Go Public contacted Air Canada, he got an unexpected refund from United. Go Public has heard from other Air Canada passengers who were also overcharged for baggage. Air Canada says its policy is to abide by all regulations, and those charges were all in error. Erica Johnson, CBC News, Vancouver.
Canadians could see some relief when they fill their grocery carts this holiday season. After years of rising food prices, the cost of many ingredients has stabilized. And shoppers could also see a break on one big-ticket dish, the roast turkey. The CBC's Paula Duhacek explains.
CBC News used federal retail data to look at how much more it costs to make a turkey dinner after 5 years inflation. The bad news, since 2019, many common recipes have gotten more expensive. For example, baking a batch of sugar cookies will cost you 38% more than it did 5 years ago. Cooking mashed potatoes will cost you 31% more. And making a tray of dinner rolls from scratch, that'll be about 29% more. The good news is, in the last year, the cost of many ingredients has started to stabilize. The median wage has also gone up about 24% since 2019.
We're seeing some slight relief from where we were a year ago, so things aren't getting worse. It's still more expensive to eat a holiday dinner than it was 4 or 5 years ago, but the pressure is coming off a little bit as compared to a year ago.
Shoppers could also get a break this year on what, for many people, is the most expensive item on their holiday dinner table, the turkey. Federal data shows that so far, turkey prices are trending down this year. Economists say that could be because there are more turkeys available, and they say demand might also be down as shoppers squeezed by the high cost of living avoid the meat case altogether. Paula Duhacek, CBC News, Calgary.
Canada's main stock index closed down today, led by losses in energy, base metals, and telecommunication stocks, while U.S. markets were mixed. Here's a look at the numbers as we head to break.
I'm Portia Clark.
And I'm Matt Brand.
Join us for news, traffic, sports, weather, and compelling stories to get your day started.
That's on Information Morning for mainland Nova Scotia, weekdays on CBC Radio.
Services to continue after 2026.
All right, never a dull moment in the CBC Weather Center. Leave the weekend out of it Saturday. I mean, there's lots to talk about between now and then even.
Yeah, for sure. And this is definitely going to be the week where things kind of change a little bit with some active weather moving back in. We've got Tuesday, Thursday, and Saturday on tap. So we'll circle back to those. First, a look at our viewer picture of the day. And you mentioned the weekend, Tom. It was an absolute terrific one. Lower Prospect is where this was spotted. And of course, a nice moon halo. This was not the only one that came into the viewer picture inbox. But thanks to Lois for snapping this, a beautiful one. And yeah, the Geminids meteor shower was, of course, Friday night and Saturday night.
Catch any of it?
We tried, but the moon was so bright.
Yeah, that's right.
It was, of course, a full moon over the weekend, and just you can see how bright it was. So that definitely hindered things a little bit. But there are more meteor showers to come in 2025. So if you missed it, don't worry too much. Now, there's the increasing cloud overnight into tomorrow morning, and that wet weather. And note the temperature is very mild with this system that will be bringing about 5 to 10 millimeters, and notably some gusty winds, gusting 60 to 70 kilometers per hour across Nova Scotia on Tuesday. So yeah, it is going to be breezy. There's the wider look at that system as it comes through. And then a bit of a break. Wednesday, we should be back into some sunshine with a mix of sun and cloud. And then our next system will start to build in. And this one is looking like mostly rain, but note the areas in pink there. That's South Mountain, then Cobequid Mountain, Mount Tom, the higher terrain areas of Pictou and Antigonish County, and out into the highlands of Cape Breton. That's going to be where we could see some slushy accumulation with this. Not overly concerned, but if you are traveling on Thursday, heads up on that. And there are those two lows. The arrows will meet there along the eastern seaboard of the northeast U.S., and that is what could bring us some snow on Saturday, though still quite a bit of uncertainty with that. Do circle back for updates.
Stay tuned for that. Okay, thanks, Ryan. Well, the world's largest gingerbread village is now on display in New York City.
I work in 3 mediums, icing and gingerbread and candy.
John Lovich's gingerbread lane has given him the Guinness World Record. You can see it inside the shops at Columbus Circle.
The Missouri native is a former fine dining executive chef whose lifelong love of Christmas inspired this career change. And his schedule is a bit like Santa's. He's already begun work on next Christmas's creation.
Dedication. Tasty looking too,
Very tasty.
That's it for us tonight. Thanks so much for watching. We'll see you next time.
Good night.